One area where the Star Wars prequels succeeded beautifully and the Star Wars sequels failed spectacularly was in the world building. George Lucas loved the idea of each movie adding more and more lore to the Star Wars universe, so in every episode he would always create new and unique landscapes for the story to be set in, along with new technology and items to be included. He created dozens of new, unique planets, such as the watery world of Kamino, the overcrowded cityscape of Coruscant, or the fiery volcano planet of Mustafar, just to name a few. But on top of that, he also added small things that just made the universe feel so much larger. For example, in episode 3, when Obi-Wan Kenobi is on the sinkhole-covered world of Utapau, he needs to chase Grievous. So the locals give him a Varactyl, which is a big green lizard. Now, it would have been so easy for George to have Obi-Wan ride a speeder here. After all, that's what the norm usually has been in Star Wars so far. But he didn't. He gave him a unique creature that we'd never seen before, and thus made the lore of Star Wars that much deeper. Another great example of this is right here. Obi-Wan is chasing Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones, and to go into hyperspace, he has to use this exterior attachment for his fighter, because there's not a hyperdrive built in. I'd say that this is actually kind of a hard concept to think of, especially when it's unprecedented in the Star Wars universe, and it's completely unnecessary. It would have been so easy for George Lucas just to say, he was here, he went into hyperspace, and now he got there. But no, he made sure we knew that there was an extra step required that made going into hyperspace that much more difficult. And this wasn't a thing in the original trilogy, because it seemed like all of the ships had a built-in hyperdrive. But given that it was dozens of years in the future, it made sense that technology had evolved that far to where the issue had been solved. But just knowing that individual ships have to deal with going into hyperspace in different ways makes the world feel so much more alive. Things like this make it feel like there's an enormous rabbit hole you could go down to find out millions of details about the galaxy. And those are only 2 examples. By the way, only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. It's free and it really helps me out, and you can always unsubscribe later. Thanks. Now compare the world building from the prequels to the sequels. Kathleen Kennedy and Disney decided to go in the opposite direction and only use things from the past movies in their universe. Don't believe me? Take a look at the planets. Almost all of them are basically copy and pasted from what's been used before. There are 2 desert planets, a salt planet that's basically Hoth, a gambling planet that's basically Naboo, and the list goes on and on. So there's a huge lack of variety in the settings. And then as for technology and other items and tools, let's put it into context. It's been 30 years since the Empire has fallen. There very easily could have been enormous technological advances that would have worked very well with the story. So let's see what's different. By my count, there are really only 3 big differences from the past movies. And those are the bombers from The Last Jedi, the updated AT-ATs from The Last Jedi, and the speeders with the giant treads on them from The Rise of Skywalker. Now, not only are those things not really different from anything we've seen before, they're really just worse. The bombers from The Last Jedi are incredibly slow and ineffective, requiring the pilot to get directly over their target before they can drop the bombs, all the while being very easily destroyed by enemy ships, as seen in The Last Jedi. A better solution for the Resistance would just have been to use the Y-Wing bombers that we see in the prequels, Clone Wars, and originals. And yes, that wouldn't have been universe expanding either, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense for bombing technology to have gotten worse in the 30 years since the originals. Next, we have the speeders from The Last Jedi, which if you remember, had giant treads instead of hovering above the ground. If you know basic science, then you know that a speeder having treads completely defeats the purpose of a speeder in the first place. What makes a speeder so fast is the fact that there is no friction that it has to overcome, since it doesn't make contact with the ground. Meanwhile, the reason that these ground speeders wouldn't work is the same reason that in real life, Lightning McQueen would be a pretty slow car. There's too much contact with the ground, and treads in particular are notoriously slow because there's so much tread that has to go over the ground in order to move the vehicle, which means more friction, which means less speed. And I've heard the argument that the reason these things are used is because they can go over rough terrain. I see your argument, but counteroffer, just don't go on rough terrain, dipsticks. Go over it. You know, kind of like how the guys you're chasing are doing. It really just boggles my mind. Again, this is another example of Disney attempting to build the universe more, but somehow making technology de-advance. And as for the AT-ATs that are in The Last Jedi, those are literally just the same thing from The Empire Strikes Back, except someone got random Lego pieces from their bin of extras and stuck them on randomly. It's like, now the foot goes back, and there's a gun here, and let's throw some random metal here for good measure. It's basically the same thing from The Empire Strikes Back. And I think I could be missing some stuff, and I'm sure there are more times that Disney tried to build the world that I just can't remember, and hey, maybe they just did something really cool or unique that's just slipping my mind right now. Like Kylo Ren's lightsaber. That thing's so sick, and it's the first time we see anything like it in the Star Wars universe. If I'm going to criticize Disney for their failures, then I have to be willing to praise them for their successes. And that lightsaber is a success. But I wouldn't say that it's the coolest lightsaber in all of Star Wars. To find out which lightsaber is, in fact, the coolest, you need to check out this video right here. There are a lot of options to choose from, and I think you'll either love or hate my #1 pick.